Welcome back to the Acro Lab. My name's Tim and this is episode 6. So you'll notice something new in the room today. We've got a little 2-foot aquarium in the home office. So don't get too excited, it's not going to be a reef tank, it's going to be a little Iwagumi style planted aquarium, like a rockscape, Japanese rock garden inspired planted tank. I know that this is a reef focused channel, but my background is I've been for many decades been involved in the freshwater hobby as well, and I love planted aquariums. So I'm gonna set up this little tank to brighten up the office and have a nice little backdrop for our episode. So for the saltwater purists amongst you, I apologise in advance, but better to have a planted aquarium in the background than just a plain wall. Bit of a dramatic week this week for the Acro Lab. Had 3 minor incidents occur on back-to-back days. The first thing that happened was I got a temperature alarm from my Neptune Apex alarm systems, and I've got that set just 0.1 degrees Celsius above where I like to run the chiller to, just in case anything's going over. I get a nice alarm, I can check it. And it was pretty strange. I came out, I had a look in the tank, and the chiller was saying it was a degree Celsius lower than what my Neptune temperature monitoring probe was suggesting. Now, the good thing is I have a third temperature sensor on the tank. My Kamoa X4 doser has a temperature sensor built in as well, and both of those sensors in the sump and the display were saying it was a degree Celsius higher than the chiller. So I did some investigation, and it turns out the chiller wasn't circulating the water properly. It wasn't getting enough water through flow, and I thought, it might be a clogged line. So I cleaned out the chiller lines. It wasn't that. I thought maybe a clog in the manifold, pulled that apart. Wasn't that. I was tracing it back, got to the return pump, and silly me, I hadn't done maintenance on my Ecotech Vectra L2 return pump for some time. So quickly pulled out the screws, got the toothbrush in, got a bit of elbow grease happening, cleaned out the return pump and the flow, set it all back up, switched it on, and the flow through the chiller was back to where it should be. And very quickly, the temperature equilibrated back between the sump and the chiller, and they were both reading the same temperatures again within sort of 5 or 10 minutes, which was great. And look, it didn't get up above anything that I would be concerned about. It was a little blip in the radar, but the beauty of having those temperature alarms set was I could quickly react, diagnose the issue, and get on top of it. I share this because I hope that you guys, if you haven't cleaned your return pumps for some time, maybe take this as a bit of a warning, and on your next maintenance, just spend that 5 or 10 minutes to get it out, put it in a bucket, and give it a bit of a clean before you go down the same path I did. So that was the first thing that happened this week, and luckily we caught it. The next thing that happened was my alkalinity. The low point in the day was about half DKH lower than what I was expecting. I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. And so I went and had a look. So as soon as I got that reading from the alkalinity reading from the Trident, I went and had a look in the tank, and I could see that the drip rate on my calc doser was a lot slower than what it usually is. And so I've been able to trace that back, and there was a little bit of clog in the calc line, so I was able to whip that dosing line out and put some fresh line in, and she was back to how she should be at about 3 and a bit litres a day, and a really nice drip rate. And within 24 hours my alkalinity had stabilised back to where I was hoping it would be. So again, it's that monitoring alert on an issue in early time and being able to react really quickly to it. The third thing that happened this week was also those darned test failure A, test failure C on my Trident. I had a bit of a clog in the lines for that as well, so I had to pull that thing apart. get in there and clean out some of the sample lines and put it back together. And luckily, that was the only issue with it, and she's been running stable ever since. So, in a period of 3 days, 3 potential issues with the tank around the chiller, the temperature, the alkalinity with the calc line, and then being blind if my Trident had gone down without sort of getting in there early and sorting it out. So sharing all those things with you, the community, so that, if you're operating any of those sorts of equipment, just be really vigilant with your monitoring and set up your alarms so that if anything does go down, you're getting the ability to react really quickly. So today we're going to do our first check-in, so a bit of a dashboard review. If you remember the story that we've been on in the last 5 episodes, and for new viewers who are coming to the channel, I moved house back in December last year, so about 3 or 4 months ago, and we moved into a new house, and basically the room I'm in here and the room next door is my office and my wife's home office, and there's a coral room over here on my right. Now that's all part of when we moved into the house. It was just a garage with a metal garage door on that wall there. No top climate control, middle of the hot Australian summer here on the Gold Coast. The sun was beating down on that metal door, and for a 6 or 8 week period there, things got really hot in here. It was hard to control the temperatures. I re-established the tank after the move with a new biome, and my calcium reactor dumped a full chamber into my sump when it malfunctioned. And so I had these 3 things going on, and it ended up losing quite a few Acropora species. And the rest of the species that I did have in the tank, the rest of the frags and mini colonies, really paled out and struggled. And so that's why I started this channel, to sort of document the recovery of this system. And early on we set some goals and some steps to success, and we're embracing this adaptive management approach to reef keeping. And by setting these goals, we're going to monitor over these first 6 months towards seeing if we can get some improvement in the system. And through documenting this approach, hopefully this is valuable to people out there who may be having similar struggles in their tanks, and to understand step by step, how you can go about getting recovery in your system. You hear on the grapevine all these stories around the average time in the saltwater aquarium hobby is like 12 months. And I just find that really, really sad that people will invest so much time and passion and energy and money into setting themselves up in this hobby, and then they just get battered down with issues, and it gets too much, and they basically just pull the pin and sell everything, do a tank shutdown, and put it all on Facebook Marketplace. And so, part of the reason I wanted to document the recovery of this tank is just to provide a bit of a case study or a documentary style of how to recover a system. So today's our first check-in. We're going to do these every 2 or 4 weeks, and we're just going to have a look at what the monitoring's telling us and what we're learning about our recovery in the system. So I've got a little bit of a presentation prepared. We'll step through that and we'll see how we're going. All right, so let's step through the check-in on the steps to success. And just as a reminder, in the last few episodes, you've seen some colour returning back to our SPS Acropora corals in the flat. Still a long way to go, but we're seeing some encouraging signs. So we know we're heading in the right direction. So this is a good time to check in and see how we're progressing. So the first couple of steps to success that we set was around water chemistry and temperature. So just as a bit of a reminder on this slide, for water chemistry, we were going to focus on 3 main things. We were going to dial in our DIY 3-part solution balanced with our Kalkwasser solution and our non-sodium chloride salts, so that we can have a nice ionic balance and stability of our three major elements in terms of alkalinity, magnesium and calcium. We're also going to focus on our trace and macro elements in terms of planning and designing our own stock solutions based off our ICP and consumption, and then delivering those stock solutions in terms of a cation and an anion solution into the system, and then monitor that through the ICP and adapt over time, with a goal of, for both our three-part and our trace element and macro, to see our trends towards natural seawater set points and to get stability in our salinity. The other thing that we were focusing on here is temperature. So we talked about getting the conditions in the coral room that are summer-proof and tuning the chiller and heater to maintain that consistency in temperature between 25 and 26 degrees Celsius. So this first graph here plots both alkalinity and pH over the last 3 weeks. So alkalinity, the daily highs are represented by the blue line and the daily lows as the orange line. So over the period of 3 weeks, my actual alkalinity has been cycling through that orange and blue line, but I just present the min and max here just as a rough guide. So you can see that my alkalinity upper has been really stable there between sort of 7.5 and 7.6, and my alkalinity lower has been slightly decreasing, a little bit of consumption there, but then we had that issue associated with the calc line getting clogged. And probably you can see it sort of progressively dropping over what looks to be about a 4-day period, and then it suddenly plunged on the 24th of March there, where the line got fully clogged. So in fact, it's probably like a 4 or 5 day period. But I only really noticed the bottom dropping out on the 24th, and then we're able to get that back. But notice how the alkalinity upper for each day has sort of returned and held pretty stable through that period. Also shown on this graph is our pH upper and lower as the purple and green lines. And we can see really good stability there between 7.9 and 8.2 each day over that 3-week period. So overall, our alkalinity and pH performing really well, which means, we're getting good alk dosing rates into the tank and good consistency there. And we can see that with calcium and magnesium. No point to dwell on these. They're really stable over that 3-week period, which is great to see. So overall, in terms of our 3-part solution, our Kalkwasser and our non-sodium chloride salts, we're getting those rates about where we need them to be to keep stability in the system while the corals are consuming. If we have a look at trace elements, I'm not going to go through them all, but I've picked out 3 here that we noted on our ICP review a few episodes back, where we've been able to get a bit of recovery in that. So one example of that is iodine, where we've been able to get it back above the bottom set point, and same with potassium. So when we moved house, potassium dropped from 410 down to just about 380. I noticed, the colours went out at the same time. So between iodine dropping out and potassium dropping out, there was definitely, I think, a large proportion of that colour loss could be prescribed to those particular elements. And you can see we've been able to, through getting potassium on its own dosing channel now, we've been able to really dial that in and get back to 410, which is great. And I'd actually like to see whether I get this up a little bit higher towards 430, 440, and see what happens with the colours then. And strontium, we've been able to get it back up above the lower set point there as well. So some good dosing strategies there to get the trends back towards natural seawater. And temperature and salinity are really stable. You can see that little blip in the purple line there, which is the temp max, just getting up above 26 to 26.1 one there, which was that issue with the chiller, which we were able to quickly rectify. So overall, in terms of our 3-part and calc and non-sodium chloride salt balance, we're going to give that a green light at this check-in period. The trace looks pretty well dialed in and it's trending towards set point, so we'll keep that at green for now. And the temperature and salinity are also really stable in the system now, which is great to see. Next steps to success were around nutrient balance, flow and lighting. We're not really done much with flow and lighting. I was pretty happy with where those are at. And so, we used flow and lighting to sort of control that dinos outbreak in January. And so we're going to hold those pretty steady. But the nutrients is one that we'll definitely focus on in this episode. We talked about imports in terms of fish food and coral food, the number of feeds, the food itself, what products we're using, the number of fish, and then our export in terms of refugium tuning, skimmer tuning, manual siphoning, and our weekly water change. So one thing that has happened in the flat over the last month is that my beautiful Sohal tang just got too big for the system. When I originally got this big boy, I had a 7-foot reef tank and he was perfectly sized for that. But when I transitioned into this 5-foot flat, he just got too big. So I've been able to find another reefer here on the Gold Coast who has taken the Sohal in. He's just set up an 8-foot reef tank at home and it's the perfect home for the big fella. So the Sohal's moved on, but that was about a month ago and my tang population at that time was just the Sohal and the Scopaz. And what I've done in the transition is I've built a little bit of a more peaceful, harmonious, smaller tang gang. So my tang gang now has that original Scopaz, but I've added in a Convict, a Powder Blue, a Tamini, and a Giardini Red Sea sailfin. So those beautiful tangs are now home to the flat, and I'm really stoked with how they're settling in, and the size is good for the tank and everything's humming along, but obviously that's thrown my nutrients out of whack getting used to these new fish and the bio load that they represent. So what I have been trying to do is increase my Chaeto growth period up to 14 hours. And you can see the old Chaeto ball tumbling away there. She's getting quite large. So I actually haven't harvested it this week because I want to sort of dial in my nutrients and particularly my phosphate, which is shown on this graph here. So we're on a semi-log scale here. The blue line here represents our phosphates. I've been taking daily readings over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and the nitrate's up here in orange, yellow. So you can see our nitrate's been pretty good. It's holding pretty steady between 5 and 9 ppm. But since we got rid of the Sohal down here and got our tang gang into the system, we've basically sort of climbed up to around 0.2 ppm on the phosphate, which is well above where I'd like to be. I don't chase numbers with phosphate. I'm really big on stability, and obviously when you look at that blue line, there's no stability there. But the good thing is over the last few days, been able to get that phosphate level down 0.06, and it's definitely, we've made some corrections here, which I'll talk about in a sec, that have helped bring this into line. And so the goal moving forward with this new tang gang and the new feeding regime I'm about to talk about is I'm going to try and get that down to 0.1 or 0.15 ppm. So we'll see how we go. The bar charts here are stacked bars reflecting the different food types that are coming into the tank. So this blue bar here is a daily bar of my flake food coming in. So back when I had the Sohal tang, I was giving him 3 feeds a day of the flake food. He loved it, and I was using the spirulina algae-based flake food that they really like. And look, my nutrients were low, so I wasn't worried about it. So I was also feeding Artemia or Mysis in once a day, which is the orange stack here. So 1 unit of that. And I was giving a squeeze of the liquid rotifers every day. And I was also giving the Reefroids and the Reef Energy in there each day. I've never had high phosphates or nitrates, so the nutrients in were quite high. But with this new BioLoad and the fish coming in, you can see that phosphate has been creeping up. So what I've done in the last week is I've stopped dosing the Reef Energy, and I've gone to every second day for the Reefroids, and I've dropped the flake food from 3 down to 2, and today down to 1. So as of right now, I'm doing a flake feed, Artemia or Mysis frozen cube, and a squeeze of the liquid rotifers. And what I'm going to do moving forward is probably only do 1 or 2 days a week of the Reefroids. So I might pick like Friday night as one that I'll remember. So Friday night's my skimmer cleaning night. So while I'm cleaning my skinner, I'll put the Reefroids in at that time and just get the nutrient import into a bit more of a balance and sort of help this trend correct down. So nutrients, definitely not as stable as I'd like, but it's a natural reaction to a change in the fish population in the tank. So I'm giving it an amber light. It's something I've got my eye on. I'm not stoked about the level I'm at, but I'm also not throwing any sudden changes, like sudden massive water changes or sudden throwing in rower phos or anything like that into the tank. Like I don't want to drop it out suddenly overnight. So I'm just gonna slow and steady decrease my nutrient import, just nice and progressively, and just get it back to where I want it to be. And flow and lighting I'm really happy with. So overall, the first 3 or 4 weeks, we're seeing some colors return in the corals, and the steps to success that we set in our adaptive management goal setting session is starting to pay off, and we've just got to keep our eye on these nutrients and really stay on top of this daily monitoring and really focus on our nutrient imports moving forward. So look, I hope there was something in there for you on this session. A little bit dry, but look, we'll do these check-ins every 2 or 4 weeks to see how the system's progressing. And yeah, hope you got something out of the session. Thanks for sitting through it, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, may your reef thrive.